Batman Arkham Knight brings the award-winning Arkham trilogy from Rocksteady Studios to its epic conclusion. Developed exclusively for next-gen platforms, Batman Arkham Knight introduces Rocksteady's uniquely designed version of the Batmobile. Welcome to episode 50 of the 5 T's of Stealth, where we will be discussing Batman Arkham Knight. Once again, the 5 T's include tasks, terrain, tools, threats, and tension. These are what I consider to be the fundamentals of stealth gaming. Once again, I played this game on normal difficulty. The game begins with a simple statement. This is how the Batman died. You then begin to learn about the current state of Gotham. Joker's body was burned, and following his death, crime rates have dropped. You then begin playing as a cop in a diner. Once inside this diner, one of the other customers approaches the cop and asks him to talk to some guy sitting in the corner who is smoking, which is not allowed in this establishment. Once the cop confronts the random man, fear gas is set off in the diner, causing absolute chaos. Still in the first-person perspective of this cop, you see these horrifying monsters running amok within the diner and fire your weapon to defend yourself. Naturally, there were no monsters in that diner, and this fear-infected cop has begun killing other fear-induced people, innocent civilians. Scarecrow then broadcasts this footage as a warning, claiming this is only a taste of what he is capable of doing. This leads to the immediate evacuation of Gotham City, as only the criminals and the scum remain behind. You are then put into the shoes of Batman as the game truly begins. Batman begins to track down Scarecrow, and upon learning of and infiltrating one of his safe houses, Batman comes across Poison Ivy taken captive. Ivy mentions a meeting of the villains hosted by Scarecrow with the intent of breaking the Bat, and it is revealed that she is immune to the fear toxin. Batman takes Ivy back to GCPD, then meets up with the Oracle to analyze the fear toxin. Batman and the Oracle are able to track the creation of the fear toxin to Ace Chemicals, and upon arrival, Batman is greeted by the Arkham Knight and his very powerful militia, who then spread out all over the city. The Arkham Knight is a mysterious man that is holding a very strong grudge against Batman, but Batman doesn't know his true identity, and throughout the game he has Alfred doing everything he can to uncover it. Batman finds Scarecrow and learns that he is planning to detonate a massive fear gas bomb at Ace Chemicals, which would make the Gotham evacuation pointless. He also threatens the life of Barbara Gordon, aka the Oracle, if Batman does not let him leave, claiming that the Arkham Knight has already captured her. It is too late for Batman to stop this detonation, but in order to contain it and reduce its radius, he creates and deploys a neutralizing agent. This process is extremely delicate and requires the slowest of movements in transporting and deploying the agent. During this process, Batman isn't exactly safe or protected from the fear toxin, and upon lifting the final container of the neutralizing agent, Joker appears gun in hand, simply asking, "Miss me?" I will happily say that this was a very successful and impactful jump scare. Yeah, it definitely caught me off guard, but more than that, the excitement of seeing Joker, the return of Joker, I couldn't help but smile. The fear toxin bomb then goes off, but thanks to the hard work of Batman, the blast is contained within Ace Chemicals as you are briefly put into the shoes of Commissioner Gordon for a flashback. This flashback reveals the existence of a few Joker-infected people. As a reminder, in Arkham City, Joker sent his infected blood to the emergency rooms all over Gotham. Most of this blood was tracked down and most of the people protected. However, an unlucky few slipped through the cracks and from this Joker blood are mutating into Joker. Batman welcomes Gordon into his secret base at the movie studios and explains that there are 5 of said infected people, but Gordon points out that there are only 4 in captivity, one of which, Henry Adams, seemed to be completely immune to this Joker mutation. It seems that the 5th of these mutated persons is Batman, and now with the fear toxin infecting him, the combination of the two kickstarts the hallucinations of the Joker. This flashback ends, and once more you are put in the shoes of Batman, now with his best friend and new accomplice, the Joker. Batman escapes from Ace Chemicals and heads to the Clock Tower, Oracle's base of operations. Upon his arrival, the Clock Tower is guarded by militia, and after dispatching of them, he finds the interior a mess and Barbara is nowhere to be found. At this time, a flashback begins showing when Joker shot Barbara, causing her injury and forcing her into the wheelchair and out of her role as Batgirl. Batman then reveals to Gordon that Barbara had been working for him, causing Gordon to storm out and tell Batman to stay away from his family. I think now is as good of a time as any to just say the Joker hallucinations are an absolute highlight of the entire franchise. In the lead up to Batman telling Gordon about Barbara's involvement, Joker is hounding him, telling him to come clean to Gordon. He's telling Batman how it's all his fault and he should put Gordon's mind at ease so he stops blaming himself, and then says how he can't wait to see the look on Gordon's face when Batman tells him it's all his fault. Immediately after this confrontation, where Gordon storms out in a rage after punching Batman, Joker says how well he thinks that went, then continues to say, Quote, "Of course I wouldn't have told him, but that's why it's so liberating being me. He's absolutely trolling Batman, and I'm absolutely here for it." On top of that, this man never stops saying some of the most deranged shit I've ever heard. There's really just this one example I want to show you that I think more than gets my point across. Here is what Joker says after you are shown the flashback of him shooting Barbara.
Oh, if I'd only had a video camera when I swept Barbara off her feet. Poor old Jimbo had to make do with a slideshow.
If that isn't convincing enough, then I give up. There are so many moments throughout the game where Joker appears and just says something wild, and I'm so happy that he found his way into this game in a major way, even after his death. Let's get back on track. Batman then begins tracking down the Arkham Knight who has Barbara, and honestly, this is where the game starts to fall apart a bit for me. There are so many different individual missions in this game that are basically a preview or a tutorial for an open world activity that you have to complete over and over and over again. For example, during this pursuit of the Arkham Knight, Batman will track down Penguin by tracking one of his vehicles back to one of their hideouts. After interrogating Penguin, there's a big combat encounter with Nightwing, which is cool, and then Batman destroys a weapon stash. This then immediately becomes an open world activity where you have to track several more vans to several more hideouts, complete several more combat encounters with Nightwing's assistance, and destroy several more weapon stashes. Another example is chasing after an armored vehicle that the Arkham Knight is believed to be driving. Once Batman deals enough damage to the vehicle, it's revealed that the Arkham Knight, who I will now refer to as AK, was not actually driving, but instead it's a militia lieutenant. After Batman interrogates the lieutenant, you immediately unlock a new Most Wanted challenge, which is to track down like 8 or 9 more of these vehicles scattered throughout Gotham. There is an absurd amount of open world busywork, and unfortunately, it's directly tied into many of the story missions. Okay, once again, let's get back on track, starting with the Penguin interrogation. Batman tracks down Penguin because he is supplying arms to AK and his militia. Once Batman interrogates Penguin, he gains a new lead relating to Simon Stagg, who Scarecrow and AK are meeting up with. Batman then heads to Stagg's airships, which are currently floating above Gotham. However, there is a militia watchtower that has harpooned an airship. Ding ding ding, you guessed it. Destroying watchtowers becomes yet another form of open world busywork that is tied into the main story. Doesn't it just make you want to jump for joy? After disabling the watchtower, Batman infiltrates the airship. Once inside, he learns that Simon Stagg was working for Scarecrow to create a device known as the Cloudburst, then tried to double-cross him and is paying the price for his actions. The Cloudburst is basically a weapon that can be used to launch and spread the fear gas in a massive area while amplifying its effect. Scarecrow and his men are now aboard this airship and are attempting to power up the Cloudburst, but are stopped by Batman before it can be fully charged. Batman then locates Scarecrow, but finds himself staring at the backs of 2 Scarecrows, unaware of which is the real one, and has to make a choice. I would imagine that either Scarecrow you pick will be the wrong choice, but hey, maybe things are a little different if you choose correctly, which I did not do. After attacking the wrong Scarecrow, Batman is exposed to even more of the fear toxin as his eyes flicker green. Joker is in control. Batman grabs Scarecrow and throws him to the side as more of the militia run in the room. But as the fight continues, these men don't get back up. They stay down on the ground, cowering in fear. They no longer wish to fight the Batman, but that does not matter. Batman literally picks these men up off the floor and continues the beatdown. With the Joker audience in the room, Batman once more confronts Scarecrow as they all yell for Batman to kill him, leading to Batman pulling the trigger and revealing it to be a hallucination. From behind, Scarecrow notes the changes in Batman, but Batman simply responds by saying Scarecrow has nowhere to run. This part honestly just makes me smile because Scarecrow says, "Who said anything about running?" then proceeds to blow up the Cloudburst's connection to the airship and escape with the Cloudburst connected to a chopper. In my opinion, this is the textbook definition of running away. You literally came to this airship to charge up the Cloudburst and activate it. However, now that Batman has prevented the charge, you disconnected the Cloudburst and leave to charge it somewhere else? That is literally running away. You failed your objective, so you're cutting your losses and salvaging what you can. So again, it kind of cracks me up to hear, "Who said anything about running?" followed by literally running away. Scarecrow then broadcasts across Gotham a video feed of Barbara Gordon in the location where Batman found Poison Ivy at the beginning of the game, and he's just taunting Batman about being a failure. Batman rushes to the safe house and upon his arrival, watches Scarecrow activate the fear toxin within Barbara's containment, waking her up. Scarecrow has left a handgun for Barbara, and upon seeing Batman she is horrified and begins to shoot at him. However, they are separated by bulletproof glass. As Barbara screams in terror, "You won't get me! I won't let you get me!" she raises the gun to her head. Joker then blocks Batman's sight of Barbara. As he walks by, Barbara pulls the trigger as Joker continues to move and reveal her body. This moment was so incredibly stunning and chilling. I could not believe what I had just watched. My jaw was most certainly on the floor. As I scrambled to pick it back up, I heard Alfred's completely devastated voice as he tried to pull Batman back from the depths of despair. Batman struggles to gather himself, but eventually he is ready to continue on the path that he must walk. He realizes that Poison Ivy's immunity could be the key to protecting Gotham and developing a cure. Poison Ivy explains that she alone will not be enough and tasks Batman with finding the roots of ancient trees and plants that she can rejuvenate to protect the city. This is a recurring thing that Batman will do 2 or 3 more times throughout the story. Batman then learns that Harley Quinn has invaded the secret base where the Joker mutated people were being kept, along with where Robin was working on a cure for said mutations. Batman quickly heads to the hideout, and once inside, assists Robin in taking down any remaining thugs, but Harley Quinn has already released the prisoners who have scattered across the movie studios. The exception to this is of course Henry Adams, the one man showing no signs of mutation even though he is infected. Batman and Robin travel through the movie studios, taking down each of the mutated persons and hauling them back to their cells. As they are returning with the final Joker-infected member, Harley Quinn appears, but along with her thugs is quickly put down by the duo. Once they re-enter the room holding all of the cells, they find the other Joker mutants dead, along with Henry Adams, the allegedly immune man, holding them at gunpoint. In order to get Batman to do what he wants, Henry threatens Harley, then kills the final other Joker-infected man. Henry then holds Batman at gunpoint while Joker in Batman's ear is telling him to kill, 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 and his eyes turn green once more. Henry is completely caught off guard seeing this change in Batman, but then states, "You're going to be spectacular," and proceeds to blow his own brains out. Robin also witnessed this change, and upon realizing that Batman is the final Joker mutant, he pleads with him to get into a cell. Naturally, Batman refuses and actually ends up locking Robin in the cell instead. Now I want to take a step back and mention what Batman was experiencing while hunting down the escaped Joker mutants. Every so often, he would get a flashback of Jason Todd, the former Robin, who was held in captivity, tortured, and murdered by Joker. Joker ended up sending the footage to Batman, and throughout this part of the story, these flashbacks come rushing back to him. This will be important later on. As Batman is exiting the movie studios, Joker is having the time of his life. He's putting the pieces together and continues to taunt Batman, explaining how if Henry wasn't immune after all, then there is no cure, and Robin had been slaving away on a wild goose chase when he could have been out there saving Barbara. Joker just really knows how to cut deep, and I love him for that. Soon after, the Batwing tracks down the Cloudburst, but it is far too late as the Arkham Knight activates it and covers Gotham in fear toxin. Running across the rooftops of Gotham while there's this layer of orange clouds covering the lower parts of the city is quite the sight. Batman then tracks down AK, who is driving around the Cloudburst tank, and an almost stealthy driving showdown begins as Batman deploys hit-and-run tactics in the Batmobile and eventually destroys the Cloudburst tank. Batman then heads back to Poison Ivy, and upon his arrival, Ivy states that nature always wins. However, as the plants are able to dissipate the fear toxin, Ivy's body fades away into nothingness. Batman then returns to the GCPD, and an encrypted message comes through which is revealed to be Gordon, who has found Scarecrow. Batman immediately heads for Gordon's location, and after maneuvering through the building, including bringing the Batmobile down with him, Batman is confronted once again by AK, this time in an absolute vehicular monstrosity capable of flattening the Batmobile. Batman is able to weaken the vehicle, but eventually has to abandon the Batmobile to escape further into the building and finds Gordon tied up. Batman defeats the thugs in the room, but is then held at gunpoint by the Arkham Knight before he can save Gordon. Batman simply asks, "Who are you?" followed by AK removing the mask and revealing that he is Jason Todd. Batman is completely stunned by the fact that Jason is alive, but Joker chimes in, hoping they won't have a falling out, and explains he may have told a teeny tiny little lie. Jason wants Batman dead, and a battle ensues where Batman slowly tries to bring Jason back from the darkness, desperately wanting to help him. As Batman finally defeats Jason, he calls Alfred to reveal the news, but when he looks back, Jason is gone. Batman then returns to Gordon Gordon to untie him, and they head to the roof together to confront Scarecrow. As Gordon and Batman are confronting Scarecrow, Jim turns on Batman and demands for Scarecrow to give him his daughter. You heard me correctly. Gordon has made a deal for his daughter's life. This is an insane reveal as Barbara is pushed around the corner, still alive, still breathing. What Batman had witnessed earlier was simply a fear gas hallucination. He had not lost her. To fulfill their deal, Gordon shoots Batman and he falls off the roof, but Scarecrow didn't want him dead, as his men pin Gordon and he slowly pushes Barbara to the edge. In this moment, Scarecrow delivers a simple line, but the way it is said has the strongest impact. I am obsessed with the delivery of this line, and it gave me cold chills. Truly. Here's what Scarecrow says as he pushes Barbara off the roof.
Shh. It's okay to be afraid.
As Barbara falls off the roof, she is caught by Batman, who calls in his spare Batmobile and gets her to safety. Batman takes Barbara back to GCPD, and shortly after, a militia assault of the building begins. After stopping the assault, Batman learns that Scarecrow went to the movie studios and took Robin, who was left in the cell. Scarecrow then gives Batman a location and tells him to come alone and get ready to take off the mask. Batman arrives at the location, takes off his gadget belt, then enters the back of a semi. Batman receives a call from Alfred revealing that someone is tracking him, and he simply mutters, "I knew he would." Shortly after, the semi crashes and Batman wanders the streets before stumbling upon the corpses of his parents. He is then confronted by not just one Joker, but yet again an army of Jokers who want him to lose control and let Uncle Jay take the reins. At the end of this hallucinated encounter, Batman snaps Joker's neck, which is all Joker wanted. He basically starts a celebratory monologue about how Scarecrow is going to set him free. Scarecrow is currently at the old Arkham Asylum, and Batman is restrained upon his arrival. Scarecrow sets up a live feed pointed at Batman with Gordon and Robin in the room. Scarecrow then tells Gordon he will allow him the honor of taking off Batman's mask, and when he refuses, Scarecrow shoots Robin, then Batman chimes in to tell him it's okay to take off the mask. Gordon removes the mask and Batman is revealed to the world to be Bruce Wayne. Scarecrow then once more injects Bruce with the fear toxin. The game then transitions to Joker in restraints, while Two-Face, Penguin, the Riddler, and Killer Croc stand in front of him planning what to do with him. Joker tells Croc to duck as a Joker-themed Batmobile crashes through the wall and he gets in, then proceeds to slaughter all the thugs in the room. Once they're dealt with, Joker gets out of the car, walking around with a shotgun as he murders the other villains. He exits the building and Gotham is in ruins as Alfred chimes in to try and bring him back to his senses. This fails as Joker answers and the game transitions back to the Arkham Asylum room where Batman is in custody, but now the game only shows Joker. Scarecrow taunts Batman, but with Joker in control, he only laughs at all of his threats, stating, "Get ready for the encore." Scarecrow rages, "Why aren't you scared?" and injects him once more with the fear toxin. Again, the game transitions with you in control of the Joker with a shotgun, but this time in first person. As Joker wanders around, it is revealed that the only thing he fears is being forgotten, and little by little, Batman statues begin to appear all around him. As Joker proceeds, he eventually comes across a large switch labeled Exit. Once pulled, it is revealed that they are in Arkham Asylum, and the doors to the intensive treatment open as a cell slides over and opens, revealing Batman inside. Joker attempts to shoot Batman, but it is no use, as he closes the gap and grabs him by the neck, stating,
I am vengeance. I am the night. I am Batman.
He then forces Joker into the cell and regains control of himself. As Batman comes back to reality, Scarecrow is threatening Gotham, then once more injects Batman with the fear toxin, who calmly states, "I am not afraid, Crane." Scarecrow in his anger puts his gun up to Bruce's head, but it is no use as Jason Todd, now with a bat symbol on his chest, shoots the gun out of his hand and shoots Bruce's restraints, setting him free. Bruce then grabs Scarecrow's arm and forces him to inject the fear toxin into himself, and a horrific vision of Batman plays, causing Scarecrow to scream and run before being knocked out by Gordon. So you could say this is where the game ends, and honestly, I like that answer. However, technically, the game is not done. Batman tells Alfred to prepare the Nightfall Protocol, but before you can achieve this ending, you have to complete a certain number of the most wanted storylines. This is the game saying, hey, go do all of our open world busy work. I reluctantly finished up what I needed to get the first ending. This shows Batman return home, and upon entering Wayne Manor, the mansion explodes, implying the death of Bruce Wayne and the death of Batman. The game then tells you to achieve the true secret ending, you have to complete all of the most wanted contracts, which from me was a big fat Hell no. So I looked it up. The true ending simply shows the reappearance of Batman, but now he appears to somehow be utilizing the fear toxin, and the cutscene shows some incredible horror Batman vibes. I mentioned in a previous Batman review that I am obsessed with Batman imagery that depicts him as a horrific entity, and this was perfect for that. I'm really conflicted now as to whether or not I even want to talk about any of the side content. None of it is really that interesting or entertaining. I guess I should talk about the Riddler again, since you know I'm his #1 hater. Just like in the previous games, there are countless riddles to solve and trophies to collect. However, in addition to this is the Riddler announcing that he has captured Catwoman, and he tells Batman he has to complete his puzzles to free her. This was a variety of stuff like Batmobile courses, gliding puzzles, and more, which wasn't too annoying honestly. It was only like 8 different puzzles. However, once Batman successfully frees Catwoman, the Riddler appears in a giant robot and fights them for a minute before deciding, you know what, I won't fight you until you complete all my riddles. Sir, as far as I'm concerned, you can stay in your little hidey hole. I will never be coming back. I should also mention that throughout the entire game, Riddler will make announcements taunting Batman to hurry up and come solve his puzzles and save Catwoman, unless he's scared or not smart enough or whatever else. I don't know what else to say, man. I just can't take any more Riddler. Honestly, I don't really want to talk about any more of the most wanted missions, since again, it's all busy work. The last thing I will mention is the existence of these separate stories where you can play as other characters. There are 6 in total, and you get to play as Harley Quinn, Red Hood, Batgirl, Catwoman, Nightwing, and Robin. None of these missions are too different or compelling, so I won't go in depth, but hey, you can play as some other characters and try a few unique mechanics. Harley Quinn in particular is pretty interesting. In terms of what you will be doing throughout the game, everything pretty much mimics the mission design of the previous games. You will be tracking down information or people while completing combat and stealth encounters. The big change up here is the addition of the Batmobile. There are a ton of vehicle combat sections or things that can only be destroyed by the Batmobile, requiring you to control it remotely. I am personally not a big fan of vehicle combat, so a lot of this was tough for me, but I'll talk a lot more about the Batmobile when we get to tension. The first thing I have to say here is that Gotham looks absolutely stunning. Over the years, I've seen clips and images from this game with people absolutely praising its visuals. These clips always looked nice, but now that I've actually played it, it's even more incredible. There's also the part of the game that has the fear toxins spread throughout Gotham, and that is just a remix on that already beautiful landscape. This game has a big open world, and just like the previous games, it feels great to run across the rooftops while gliding and grappling through the city. However, with the size of this map and the addition of the Batmobile, a lot of the time I just wound up driving since it was so much faster. This isn't inherently a problem, and there is still plenty of time for grappling and gliding, but it does feel like a bit of a bummer sometimes. The Batmobile is not just something that changes how you move through the game, as there are several sections specifically designed for it. The first and simplest thing to mention would be the racetracks created by the Riddler that have a lot of moving components with driving on the walls and avoiding traps. The more interesting and exciting element, in my opinion, is the use of the power winch, which allows the Batmobile to slowly slide down walls or move obstacles around. There is a section late in the game while searching for Gordon that requires you to take the Batmobile into this building and slowly lower it further and further. This was pretty damn enjoyable. Aside from that, things end up similarly to the norm. The insides of buildings feel good to move through, but they aren't exactly the most memorable. You do get to move through a couple of airships in this game, and that is definitely a cool set piece. In terms of the stealth and counter design, things are largely unchanged. However, there are some improvements that make things feel much better. For starters, gargoyles or the like are no longer your only option for a vantage point. Now, there are countless walkways and steel beams you can make use of, which gives you more maneuverability from high up. The other major change is the ability to grapple into the vents. Some vents will have an entrance up high on a wall, and you can shoot in through there to slide down beneath the floor, but the opposite is also possible. If you are in the vents on the ground level, you can use your grapple to launch yourself back up. Aside from that, you've still got the typical gargoyle vantage points, vents in the floors and walls, as well as the occasional weak walls that can be destroyed. Let's go ahead and get it out of the way and just say that Arkham Knight is easily the best feeling game of the franchise. It really just is not close. In terms of the combat encounters and stealth encounters, this game is the pinnacle in my opinion. The only point of contention to this statement is the Batmobile. Your mileage will vary, pun intended, on how much you enjoy being in the Batmobile and shooting other vehicles. As I mentioned earlier, I'm not much of a vehicle combat guy, so a lot of this was a drag. Let's start with the stealth. The big change here is the ability to pull off a silent takedown from basically anywhere. Are you above someone on a platform? Have a silent takedown. Are you climbing across a wire above someone's head? Here, have a silent takedown. Are you walking on the railing right next to a guy because you were aiming for the walkway but awkwardly got forced onto the railing? Here, have a silent takedown. I could keep going, but the point I'm trying to make is simple. You no longer have to fight the game to get in just the right spot for a silent takedown, and you no longer have to compromise your stealth for a takedown that isn't silent. In this game, basically wherever you are, you can complete a silent takedown. Yes, that includes jumping out of a vent in the ground to silently strangle an enemy. The inverted takedown is still around, and you might think I'd get tired of it after 4 games, but it's still one of my favorite things to do. There's one other major change to the stealth that greatly improved my experience, but it is tied to a gadget and is dependent on the enemies present in the encounter. I am of course talking about the Disruptor. In the past, this was simply used to jam guns, but in Arkham Knight, there are several upgrades that allow this thing to be an absolute beast. To tell you just what this thing is capable of is going to require name dropping some enemy types, but I won't really be going into details on them until the threats section. With the Disruptor, you can hack a drone operator's controls, which will shock him and knock him once a drone spots you. You can hack a detective mode tracker, so when the enemy locks onto your location, they are shocked and knocked. Lastly, that I care about at least, you can hack a medkit, so when a medic tries to revive someone, they are once again shocked and knocked. In terms of the beat 'em up combat encounters, things feel a lot better as well. I think the main reason for this, for me, is the added impact of your gadgets. Again, to explain this will require crossing over the threats line a bit. Let me rattle off some of the quickfire gadget interactions for you. You can quickfire a batarang to instantly knock out a charging enemy, quickfire your Batclaw to disrupt the electrified enemies, and quickfire your remote electrical charge to overload stun batons. There are more gadgets that can be quickfired, but these are the particular interactions that immediately come to mind. Let's take a step back and discuss the basics. In terms of gadgets, you have access to the following: Batarang, Batclaw, Explosive Gel, Remote Electrical Charge, Smoke Pellet, Disruptor, Remote Controlled Batarang, Line Launcher, Remote Hacking Device, and the Voice Synthesizer. Apparently, you can also find the Freeze Blast, but I never went looking for it. All these gadgets are returning from the previous games, with the exception of the Remote Hacking Device and the Voice Synthesizer. The Remote Hacking Device takes the place of the Cryptographic Sequencer, but it fulfills the same role. However, you can now use it to hack certain electronics to cause distractions or straight up incapacitate enemies. The Voice Synthesizer is much more interesting. You can probably guess by the name, but this allows you to play the voice of someone else, for example, the Arkham Knight or Harley Quinn, to order around thugs to move to a location, flip a switch, or something similar. I really like the idea of this gadget, but I found myself usually forgetting about it. I'll take this time to once again sing high praises for the Disruptor, which is why I did not interact with the Voice Synthesizer more, since I was so focused on causing crazy interactions with it. Let's transition to the combat basics. As usual, you have access to a punch, counter, and cape stun. There is also the ultra stun attack, which is performed with 3 consecutive cape stun attacks. During combat encounters, there is a combo meter that increases with each strike. As the counter increases, you can perform special attacks and takedowns. Enemies will fall to the ground as you deal damage, but you need to perform a ground takedown to knock them out for the rest of the fight. If you don't, they will eventually be knocked out still, but it will take more damage. In combat encounters, you can now actually pick up certain weapons and use them to attack. There are even environmental takedowns that allow you to instantly take down an enemy by smashing them with a lamp or pushing them into an electrified fence. In several missions, you will also be able to switch between multiple characters. These additional characters include Robin, Nightwing, and Catwoman. When I say switch between characters, I mean both will be present in the fight, and you can choose which perspective you want to play from while the other character is still there and still fighting. However, the most interesting aspect tied to switching characters is the dual takedown mechanic. This allows you to set up a takedown involving both characters while switching who you are controlling. General movement feels good with the typical sprint, crouch, slide, and dodge roll. However, I will say I had some difficulties with the slide at times. The Batman basics of grappling and gliding still remain and are a highlight of the game. You can still dive while gliding, then pull back up and grapple boost to launch yourself high into the sky from your grapple point. Arkham Knight has a massive skill tree, and I'm not about to go over all of it. In fact, I'm barely going to touch on it. There are a ton of upgrades, and you will unlock a ton of skill points by completing most wanted missions. The upgrades typically include upgrades to your gadgets, making them more efficient or adding new options, as well as upgrades to your armor, allowing you to take more damage. The grapnel boost has several upgrades which will launch you higher, but the controls for it are ridiculous. Each time you upgrade it, you have to press the button an additional time to activate the higher upgrade. This is a minor complaint, but why not just have the highest upgrade be the only option available so you didn't need an extra button press for each upgrade? Seriously, by the time you've upgraded it like 4 or 5 times, you have to sit there and press and hold about 4 or 5 times to get your max boost. There are a ton of upgrades for the Batmobile as well, but honestly, I barely even looked at them. All I can say for certain is that you can upgrade your vehicle's health. Within your skill trees, there is another upgrade that increases how many enemies you can chain to with the Fear Multi-Takedown. What is the Fear Multi-Takedown, I hear you asking? Well, it's rather simple. The Fear Multi-Takedown is an ability that lets you chain your takedowns instantly from one enemy to the next. Other examples of this ability include the Assassin Focus from Assassin's Creed Mirage and the Mark and Execute feature from Splinter Cell Blacklist. In my review of Blacklist, I mentioned how this feature in Assassin's Creed Mirage looked like complete ass even though I haven't played the game, and how I basically avoided it in Blacklist since I did not need someone doing all the work for me. The Assassin's Creed Mirage one in particular kind of bugs me, especially when I'm on YouTube and I get a short of some guy acting like he's doing something incredible, when in reality he's moving his camera and clicking on 5 different people and then saying, "Oh, execute that for me. Thank you." It drives me nuts. It drives me nuts. In Arkham Knight, I mostly feel the same way. Let me explain. During stealth encounters, I basically completely avoided this feature, aside from some testing, or if I had some crazy chain reaction possible. In other words, the use of the multi-fear takedown in stealth encounters was extremely rare. In terms of combat encounters, however, I absolutely loved opening a fight with this Fear Multi-Takedown. It is genuinely the perfect opening to a massive brawl. Imagine some guy pops out of a vent, immediately takes down 5 of your buddies, and then gears up for a fist fight with everyone left in the room. That shit is so raw. Alright, I've been pretty much avoiding it, but let's talk about the Batmobile a little before wrapping up the tools section. If you somehow have no idea, the Batmobile is basically Batman's supercar. The Batmobile has 2 modes, battle mode for fighting and allegedly pursuit mode for the high-speed chases. I don't remember hearing pursuit mode, but a quick Google search and that's what I'm told. In pursuit mode, you pick up some crazy speed with the ability to drift and use thrusters. Your thrusters recharge over time and can also be charged faster with drifting. You can also sideswipe to smash into enemy vehicles and fire an immobilizer to, let's say, safely take down vehicles. In battle mode, things naturally get a lot crazier. To start simple, in this mode you can fire the power winch, which can be used to anchor the Batmobile or allow power to be transferred as you rev the engine. The Batmobile in battle mode also has a variety of weapons, including a minigun and the 60mm cannon. These are your basic weapons, but there are several others that charge up as you deal damage. You can fire a missile barrage, trigger an EMP, or even hack an enemy vehicle, causing them to fight by your side. Something I found pretty funny ties into Batman's no-kill rule. If you ever run into anyone on the street, like an electric barrier or something is shown as you make impact and send them flying. I should also mention that you can control the Batmobile remotely, use it for assisted Batmobile takedowns in beat-em-up sections, and use the vehicle's momentum to launch yourself out of of it into a glide or even a glide takedown. Your basic enemy in this game is a variety of thugs, but mainly the militia of the Arkham Knight. I'm going to breeze through the basics since we've discussed them regularly in the previous reviews. Just like in the previous games, enemies come equipped with a variety of weapons including snipers as well as other guns, baseball bats, stun batons, and blades. Some enemies will also attack bare-handed, pick up objects in the environment to throw, or wear heavy armor requiring a cape stun to open them up for a takedown. Baseball bats can be countered just like fists, while stun batons have to be attacked from behind, shields need an aerial takedown, and blades have a special blade dodge mechanic. Let's start with the combat changes. Occasionally, some enemies, specifically those wielding swords, would jump off the shoulders of their ally for an aerial attack, which is very cool, but could be countered like normal. Occasionally, some basic enemies will start to psych themselves up to charge at you. At this time, you can quickfire a batarang to knock them out. During combat, some enemies will grab you and you have to mash attack to hit them behind you and break free. As mentioned earlier, enemies wielding stun batons no longer have to exclusively be targeted from behind, as you can quickfire the remote electrical charge to overload the weapon and cause them to drop it. There is the new enemy type among the ranks of the militia, and that is the combat medic. They have two main features. The first is that they can revive any enemy you have knocked out, but they appear to have a limited number of charges for this. I'm not sure if they're using a medkit or defibs or whatever else. The other is that they can electrify their allies, preventing you from attacking them. This is basically the effect of the stun rod, but it's attached to their armor. As mentioned earlier, this is when you need to quickfire the bat claw to dissipate the electricity. The typical giant enemy type returns in this game in the form of the brutes. Brutes are very dangerous as they come in several variants, including bladed brutes and shock brutes. Let's transition to the changes in the stealth encounters. This is where things are even more impactful in my opinion. I think the first change I noticed occurred when I used the inverted takedown on an enemy, and the other enemies shot the rope to get him down. This didn't really alter anything for me, but it was a nice touch. If they notice you're spending too much time up top, the enemy will start to throw mines onto the vantage points. As I mentioned earlier, this is not just the gargoyles anymore, and enemies will throw mines on any sort of steel beam or path you are frequenting. The militiamen have a few more tools at their disposal, including the detective mode tracker. I think this tool mostly speaks for itself, but in case it doesn't, let me explain. Whenever you enter detective mode, the enemy carrying the tracker will stop and pull out a little device while claiming he's picking up a signal. After a short delay, you will see a bar begin to fill up at the start of your screen, showing the progress of the track. Once the bar is full, the enemy will have a lock on your location. I like this quite a bit because it could be seriously exploited. As I mentioned, whenever this guy gets a signal, he literally stops walking. In other words, if you time it right, you can kind of make this guy stop walking constantly and separate him from the group, or get him to stop as you sneak up from behind. As I mentioned earlier, you can also use the disruptor on this device. I would love to use the disruptor, then purposely let the bar fill up and watch the guy get zapped as his friends walk over completely confused. The militia would also regularly come with drones and their operators. These drones would fly around the area, but as far as I can tell, they don't attack you, they just alert everyone to your presence. Again, this is another thing I love to do with the disruptor, where I could sabotage the controls, then purposely let the drone spot me and cause the operator to get zapped. During stealth encounters, there would also be the appearance of a brute with a minigun. I really liked this addition. Obviously, you can't just run up behind a brute and finish him off with a silent takedown, meaning this guy is a bit of trouble. This is probably the closest an enemy has felt to the heavy armored knights from the Styx franchise that you could not attack with your dagger. Once you sneak up on a minigun brute, a sequence would begin as you are spamming punches and dodging his slow swings until he is down for the count. Another massive change to the stealth formula is enemies actually looking through grates on the floor. When an enemy is walking by the grates, some will turn red, indicating that they can see inside those grates. If you happen to be in that location, they will spot you. If your enemies know that you are in the vents, they will start prepping a thermobaric charge, meaning you need to get the hell out of there. Some enemies will have optic camouflage, making them invisible to your detective vision. You can still see them, they just don't have an outline like normal enemies. There's an upgrade that allows the disruptor to disable this, but with its limited ammo, it didn't feel worth. The detective mode jammer makes a return in this game and is much more deadly. Instead of just preventing the outline of enemies and giving you this fuzzy filter, now the detective mode jammer completely scrambles your screen when you activate it. You can't see a damn thing, and that's how it should be. I thought I was done, but I have one more thing that I'm not completely certain on. I believe that there are some enemies during stealth encounters who will place sentry guns. Again, I'm not 100%, but I swear I heard people yelling, "Placing sentry gun," the whole game. Sentry guns, by the way, can be pretty deadly and appear in many stealth encounters and the occasional traversal section. They can be destroyed if they take enough damage so the Batmobile comes in handy, or you can sneak behind them and disable them. The last thing to talk about is vehicles. With the addition of the Batmobile, there are of course a ton of enemy vehicles to fight. Most of these vehicles are actually unmanned tanks being remotely controlled. I really don't feel like going into a lot of depth here, but I'll give a little. Most vehicles will have a line from them showing where they are about to fire. There are small tanks that just shoot in a straight line and bigger tanks that lock on from far away. Most of these vehicles have a weak spot that you can hit for a one-tap. There are also some choppers flying around. The most exciting vehicle in my opinion is the Cobra tank, as it sets up these stealth driving encounters that I did not know I needed. Basically, these Cobra tanks are too strong for the Batmobile's weapons, so you have to sneak up from behind it and lock onto its weak point before firing. Alright, the only thing left to discuss is the boss fights, I guess, but those don't really exist. There's realistically only 2 or 3 boss fights to discuss, and they all involve Jason Todd, or the Arkham Knight. The first fight is when the Arkham Knight is in the Cloudburst tank. This is actually pretty tense as you have to lock onto the tank's 4 weak points, but after each hit you have to speed away to survive the onslaught. The second boss fight is when you learn that the Arkham Knight is Jason Todd. This leads into a stealth encounter where Jason Todd camps on a gargoyle with a sniper and you have to sneak past turrets and other malicious soldiers, then grapple up to him. Rinse and repeat a few times and he's down for the count. I guess I should also mention the chase sequence that once again involves AK. I have no idea what the vehicle is called and I don't know how to describe it other than it's big and it can crush the Batmobile. It's like some sort of drill. You have to bait AK into following you down 3 or 4 different paths, all of which have bombs at the end that he will run into and damage his vehicle. I'm sure this won't come as a surprise, but Arkham Knight is most certainly not the first game in this franchise that is difficult. I have enjoyed this franchise, but difficult is absolutely not a word for it. Batman Arkham Knight reminds me of a couple other games that I have reviewed in the 5 T's of Stealth. Firstly, let's start with Sniper Ghost Warrior 3. I haven't played all the Sniper Ghost Warrior games yet, but I did play through 1, 2, and 3. While I was playing 3, all I could think was that this is the best feeling game in the franchise, but there is so much bullshit surrounding it. Why is this an open world game? Why do I have some shitty Jeep I have to drive to every mission? There were just several things along those lines. Arkham Knight is the same. This is so easily the best feeling game in the franchise. I'm not necessarily saying it's the best game in the franchise, but it is undeniably the most polished package. However, there is so much annoying open world busywork. At first you might think, who cares, it doesn't matter. But then you realize you can't even finish the game without completing at least some of it. On top of that, several of the actual main campaign missions are just the first example of an open world task. That is so incredibly annoying. You lose these special curated moments just so that they can say, hey, wasn't clearing out this tower so much fun? How would you like to do it 10 more times? You loved chasing down that vehicle, right? Well, we've got 8 more scattered all across Gotham for you to find. That's seriously how it felt to me. I was no longer playing through the story, I was just unlocking new forms of busywork. Now I want to talk about the similarities with Splinter Cell Blacklist. Splinter Cell Blacklist was very different from the first few games in the Splinter Cell franchise, but the bottom line is that just like Arkham Knight, it felt the smoothest and most refined. Again, it was very different, so this is not a perfect comparison, but please bear with me. Splinter Cell Blacklist also added a lot of enemy variety. In fact, it was the best enemy design of that franchise as far as I'm concerned. This is where the comparison comes into play. Batman Arkham Knight just like Splinter Cell Blacklist, makes the baseline of the experience more difficult by adding more enemies who require more adaptation. However, the games don't actually become more difficult because they give you a much smoother feeling experience while expanding your options. So rather than becoming more difficult, these games become more diverse, and every encounter feels a lot less repetitive. In other words, more enemies, but also more options. Now, I think I'd like to talk a bit more about the Batmobile and the issues that have come with it. The Batmobile itself is obviously a very cool thing. However, it feels like Rocksteady created the Batmobile and was so proud of their new toy that they just decided to shove it down our throats. What I'm trying to say is that I like the Batmobile, but there's most certainly this overexposure going on. I like to think that the Arkham games have been built on 3 core pillars: traversal, stealth, and combat. This game adds a 4th pillar, which of course is the Batmobile, and it just feels like it completely ruins the balance. There are so many tank fights that just all feel the exact same. Although, surprisingly, I do like the Cobra tank stealth encounters, and I did actually enjoy the Cloudburst fight. Aside from that, anytime a tank rolled up on me, I yawned. I completely understand that it could just be a me thing, and that's fair, but it's still how I feel. It almost feels like they decided to cut all the boss fights so that they could spend all their time and energy on the Batmobile. I don't want to rant too much though, so let's move on. I've mentioned that there aren't really any boss fights in this game, and that's something I'm conflicted on. I've made it very clear that I'm not a fan of most of the boss fights throughout this franchise. I am not about to go back on that statement. However, these encounters added life to the story, and if nothing else were a nice change of pace. Now instead, I get to see Jason Todd on a gargoyle, and that's it. I guess you could argue that there are boss fights in the Most Wanted missions, but those are all glorified regular stealth or combat encounters. The villains were basically just reskins of the regular enemies. I once again want to praise this game for just how good it feels. Are there aspects of the previous games that I miss? Sure, but honestly, I think the only things I miss are the remote claw and shock gloves, both found in Arkham Origins. However, the Disruptor was so satisfying that I'm not sure I care. The enemy design is once again top notch. A big aspect of stealth that matters to me is consequence. A big weakness a lot of the time is enemies with no complexity who don't react to anything you do. In other words, there are no consequences for your actions. The last few games definitely suffer from this at least a little bit. Arkham Knight really fixes this, as you now have to juggle several more variables in each encounter. I know these are stealth reviews, but the combat itself has also improved greatly. This is the first time where just spamming punch didn't feel the most efficient. There is so much going on in each encounter now that you have to be ready to react with all your gadgets to level the playing field. I really appreciate having to actually use my brain more than press punch or counter. There is one big issue I need to mention. My game crashed a lot. I did some research and changed some settings, which fixed the issue for a while, then it would start crashing again. It's probably my ignorance causing the issues, but still these crashes were frequent. I want to double back to the story. The highs of this story are so incredibly high, but I'd be lying if I said it didn't have its issues. The main thing I'm confused about is the whole Joker mutation element. As I've explained, I absolutely love how big of a role Joker had in this game. I loved his involvement, but again, I'm a little lost. I could sit here and start to poke holes into the existence of Joker and why people are mutating into him, but I don't really want to. Sometimes, and I do this very rarely, you have to suspend your disbelief. The bottom line here is that I love hanging out with Joker throughout the game, so even if there are some serious question marks about how any of this is possible, I don't think I care. The other major aspect of this game is the reveal of the Arkham Knight's identity. For starters, this was spoiled for me years and years ago, so maybe that's part of why I just don't care that much. However, the only reason that his identity matters is because he was a Robin. Seeing the torture from Joker is obviously horrible and sad, but in all reality, I have no connection to Jason Todd. This has not been my Robin ever, as I have only known Tim Drake throughout this franchise. It honestly feels a bit like Talia al Ghul from Arkham City. They wanted us to care about her, but we got like 10 minutes with her where they showed her and Batman were lovers and that's it. I did not care about her at all. Now in Arkham Knight, they show me some depressing torture and then reveal that Jason Todd is alive. Again, yes, it's crazy for Batman that the Robin he thought died is not standing here in front of him, But throughout my playtime of the entire franchise, it is never once apparent that a former Robin has gone missing. There is no mention of Jason Todd. There's potentially mention of him in some audio files or some little thing that I just didn't go reading into, but just playing through the games, there is no mention of Jason Todd. So, when they reveal him to be alive as the big bad, I just simply do not care. The Arkham Knight is just not someone I care about at all, and the Jason Todd reveal does not change that. The best parts of this entire story were tied to the fear gas illusions and Joker infection, with some examples being Barbara killing herself, an army of Jokers attacking you, Henry Adams killing himself because you're so spectacular, or the entire ending where Joker starts to take control. There's one thing about this franchise that I have yet to mention in any review. It's a small detail, but I just love how the damage on Batman's suit continues to stack. You can see the cuts and bullet holes, and that's just such a nice touch in every game. Batman Arkham Knight is easily the most refined feeling game in the franchise when it comes to the combat and the stealth. However, Rocksteady spent way too much time flexing the Batmobile, which hurts the overall balance of the gameplay. On the story side of things, there are some extreme highs that are trippy or depressing, but there are some plot holes here and there and moments that aren't nearly as impactful as they should be. Not to mention, there are several missions in this story that are a wash and sacrificed simply to show you the process of completing some of the open world busy work. All in all, there are plenty of flaws with this experience that can be picked apart, but the actual gameplay side of things is the best it's ever felt, and spending so much time with my best pal Joker can't be seen as anything other than a win.